Hi, it's Peter Wright in Ontario, Canada, with episode number 32 of the Yakking podcast, where we talk about life, business, and more. And we bring you tips and ideas for a changing world. And we're living in a very changing world at the moment. Unfortunately, Kathleen can't be with us today. She gives her apologies. She had a last-minute emergency she had to attend to. Nothing serious at all, nothing to worry about. So it's just me. And as always, a very interesting guest. And it's my pleasure to introduce Mark Hultgren. And Mark, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, my trade or profession is civil design. I design roads, bridges, utilities, everything you don't see or you drive on. I've worked on some large projects, 24,000 acre development on the west side of Las Vegas, Nevada. It's called Summerlin. That was 5.5 years of my life. I've done small towns, utility systems, water treatment plants, and when the economic downturn hit in early 2000s, I did some spot jobs as a designer, but it was hard to stay, employed full time. So I started breaking into web design and learning HTML and CSS and PHP. And so I used Lisp programming, lost in stupid parentheses, as the coders like to call it, which is what a lot of commands in AutoCAD and Civil 3D run Lisp routines. So it was, really pretty easy to step over from Lisp into PHP and HTML to tags, which led to XML. So the coding, I've been working with computers since 1981, almost 40 years.
Yeah.
And I really got tired of seeing people getting raked over the coals and getting gouged to have somebody build them a website.
Right.
There's so many programs out there, WordPress, Joomla, Drupal, that are free open source code, and they're not that difficult to learn. What was it? I think it was early 2010, 2011, somewhere around in there. I created a membership. It was a network blog, what they now call PBL or PBNs, private blog networks.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a membership where each member had their own blog on a keyword specific domain name, like smallplotgardens.com,
Mm-hmm.
or and each sub blog in there was something about gardens.
Right.
And it gave me a chance to teach the users how to use WordPress, how to deal with plugins, themes, how to manipulate them, massage them to get them to look just the way they wanted it. And Chuck Bartok was one of the first people that got together with me. That was back when he was starting off beginner's marketing class.
Okay,
way back.
Right. Yeah.
And, but eventually that membership dropped off because everybody got so comfortable with WordPress that they put their own site up.
Right.
So I said, okay, well, I'll sell hosting and domains. So it was just a nice segue into that.
Sure.
And, now I've got, 80 people with their websites hosted on my cloud server and through Amazon.
Yep.
S3 and EC2. And I provide the maintenance. I do their updates. I do the security. I do the backups. So, they can focus on their blog and not keeping it safe and,
Sure.
man, I got to update this plugin. I just got to notice that, it needs updating. Well, I do that all in the background for them.
Wow, that's really good, because that takes time. I have about 9 websites of my own and 1 or 2 partners, and I do all that updating and checking plugins and this and that and themes, and it takes a bit of time to keep track of all that.
Yeah, and you can't just go in and update a plugin.
No.
Because, sometimes WordPress gets updated and the plugin doesn't.
Yep.
Or the plugin gets updated and WordPress isn't.
WordPress doesn't, yeah.
So each one of these sites has its own staging area.
That's right.
So
I
have to test it on the staging and then go through and, well, did it break anything? No, yes, maybe. And if it doesn't, then push it to the live site.
Right. Going back to your design side, before we get further down the website route, because I've got a few questions for you there. How did you first get into design? Was this an interest at school? Did you do some sort of design work at school, or was it passion?
I've always had an artistic, flair.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And, when I went in the Navy, one of my friends in the Navy was a cartographer.
Okay.
And that's how I got exposed to it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was back in the old days with ink on mylar and ink on starched linen.
Yep.
And, when I got out, I went to college and I said, well, I'm going to declare 2 majors, accounting and architecture.
Right.
Well, after the first quarter, I dropped the accounting. I like numbers, but I can't sit there and write numbers all day. And I switched the accounting over to engineering because I found out the architects make the building look good, but the engineers make it work.
Make it work, absolutely. Yeah. So here's a question for you, and I'm thinking of our younger viewers and listeners in our audience, and something I've had feedback from my sons who are now in their 40s. Like you, I did military service soon after leaving school. Before I had a passion for farming, but before I really knew what I wanted to do, and I found that gap, for want of a better term, and that exposure to the harsh realities of the world by doing military service certainly crystallized my thinking. And when I came out, I put my head down and started working much harder than I might have done otherwise. So did you have something similar in your experience?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
When I went in the Navy, and then when I got out of the Navy, that's when I went to school.
Right.
But for 2 years after I got out of the Navy, I drove truck cross country.
Okay.
I wanted to, still had some, I don't know,
freedom,
gypsy blood in me or something. I don't know. But, I wanted to take my time and figure out what it is I wanted to do. And then I went to school and I got my associates. I said, well, before I invest, 4 or 5 years of my life in education, I'm going to make sure that this is what I want to do.
What you want to do, sure.
So I went to work for a structural engineer. And at that time, the state of Nevada would have allowed me to work for 4 years with my associates and take the EIT, engineering training.
Right.
Well, 3.5 years into that 4 years, they changed the law. Nobody takes the EIT without a bachelor's.
No.
Well, they told me that, I was just outside of the grandfather time limit. And I said, okay, now what am I going to do? I've been drafting and designing for 3.5 years plus the school. And that's when CAD started coming on.
Okay.
So I started with a mainframe, on a dumb terminal, a block backs, and did calculations that way, where you'd punch in your numbers and digitize everything and then send it off and come back the next day and see what it looked like.
Right. Yeah.
And hope it's right. And then shortly after that, Autodesk came out with their software, and then DCA, and then Sofdesk, and then Land Desktop, and now Civil 3D. And I worked with Bentley and MicroStation, Inroads, Geopack, but I always keep going back to Civil 3D.
Right.
To me, it's just more functional, and user friendly.
Right. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that field at all, and but I also started down the accounting road and took I took some bookkeeping diploma courses, although I was in sales at the time. But I found, just like you're saying with accounting softwares, that I've been through a whole lot of different variants, and I find one of the best I've ever used was a South African one when I lived in Africa called Pastel, which to me was brilliant and far easier and quicker for me to do my books with, for both my corporation and myself, than some of the more modern ones. So yeah, I got to share some history, or ask you for history. You were talking about computers since the 80s, which was still in the mainframe era, and I know that South Africa was obviously a year or so behind North America in developments. I was working for a big corporation at the time, and I got the first ever IBM PC on my desk as a manager in that. That must have been in about the mid 80s, and it was not even stiffy disks, it was the floppy disk.
The big 5 1/4 floppies.
That's right. Yep. Yeah. And I mean, it could do way less than my telephone can do now, but this was state of the art stuff. And then when I left and started my own business, I got a 286 and a printer, and that cost me then the equivalent of $5,000. So that would be like, I guess, $100,000 nowadays, and that was state of the art. And then I graduated up to, I think, to a 386 or something. But before I came to Canada in the early 2000s, I had not been on the internet or sent an email because our internet was so bad. Where I was farming then in Africa, we just didn't have internet. So it was all foreign to me when I came to Canada in 2003. Yeah, anyway, it's amazing how quickly technology advances, though, isn't it? It's just phenomenal.
Yep, the software does a 180 every 18 months.
Yep.
And the hardware, you've got to replace that usually every 2 years maximum.
Right.
Just to keep up with the software.
That's right. I know, it's unbelievable. Where's it going? I have it's obviously because of phones being so powerful, we could miniaturize our computers, desktop and laptop, except for the screen. What's the big development that's going to come on screen? Is it going to be a hologram? Is it going to be a foldable hologram? So you can just project onto a wall or in the air or something?
With the 5G,
you
won't have to worry about the bandwidth.
Yeah.
So it'll be able to do a projection. We'll have wall-sized viewers.
Right.
You just point it towards a light-colored wall, and
there you go. So that's
they've already got those out for keyboards and mice. I'm sure you've seen those, the 3 little tripod that you stand up and it projects the keyboard down on your desktop.
No, I haven't seen that. I must confess. Wow.
It won't be long. Screens will be the same way.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned 5G. I'm going to ask you this one. I was watching a video the other day, and it was in Denver, one of the cities where they first put the towers in. And the guy that was doing it said it's perfect when I'm standing under the tower. And he downloaded the full-length Gone with the Wind movie in no time at all. But he went 60 paces away into a coffee shop, good, and 5G didn't work. It just reverted to 4G. So was he just making a mountain out of a molehill, or is that a real problem at this stage?
Right now, 5G is still in its infancy, because say you're sitting right under a 5G antenna.
Yeah.
And you're outside of the building, you've got great reception. Right. You step inside the building behind a glass window, and your reception drops off.
Right. Okay.
You know, it's such a short wave frequency that it can't get through objects.
Okay.
Like the longer waves do.
So how do they get around that one?
There's a couple companies out there that are working on, I'm not sure exactly how to say it, but it will transform the waveform for a short distance to get through that structure.
Okay.
And then it'll go back to the short waveform.
Okay. I'm with you. When I was in Africa, we relied on two-way radios a lot for communication, because there was landlines didn't work. We didn't have very good mobile coverage, and we had radio repeaters up on mountaintops or hills to get distance, and they had the incoming frequency was whatever our frequency we dialed in, and then the receiving and transmitting components of the repeater worked on a different frequency to get that across. So I guess that's been done in old technology too. Interesting, very interesting. I'm jumping around a bit, but I'm sure all of this will be interesting for our viewers and listeners. So when I was on your website, a couple of your products that you sell caught my eye, and I don't know them, and it was Cool 3D and Media Studio Pro 8. What do those do?
Call 3D. You sure it wasn't Civil 3D?
No, it said Cool. See my accent. Sorry, Cool. COOL 3D.
Oh, Cool 3D. That's a software for similar to Maya or Autodesk's character generator.
Okay.
You know, it allows you to create 3D models.
Right. I'm with you.
Stretch and pull shapes to get the figure that you want.
Okay.
Both of those are rather old. I'm sure that there's newer versions out, but I think I put those up 4 years ago. 3 years ago.
Okay.
You know, I've focused more on actually presenting my services and products on my website.
Right.
Like when you go to my website, you'll notice the two little icons down in the lower right corner. One is a chat bot.
I saw that. Yeah, good one, yeah.
And the other is the call widget, where you can fill in your phone number and hit call me, and it sends a message to my phone. All I've got to do is press 1 to call you back.
That's clever.
And if it's outside of office hours, you can schedule when you would like me to call you.
Very good.
Hannah, no. Sorry about the dogs.
No, that's fine. Don't worry. I love dogs.
2 big dogs.
What breeds have you got?
One's a Great Dane, the other's a Yellow Lab.
Oh, nice. Yeah, for the last few years, for the first time since virtually I was 3 years old, I've been without a dog. And my lady who I live with she's a cat person. We have 8 cats. And I did have a dog who came in when we only had 6 cats as a pup and got used to them, and he was fine. And he got sick. He got to about 12 and he had to be put down. And with 8 cats already resident, there's just no way I can bring another dog in. You know, so. And also, we live on a farm, but we're not that far from a busy road, and we're not fenced. So I was lucky with the first one; he didn't go near the road. But I might not be so lucky with another one. I don't want to take a chance. You know, on my farm, I had 6 dogs back in Africa, and 2 big, 2 medium, 2 small. The 2 small lived in the house at night. The medium ones were in the house. The big ones slept on the veranda. But we had major security issues, so with a Rottweiler and a Mastiff cross Shepherd, and then 2 medium size and 2 small. So it was a good defense mechanism.
Yeah. Well, the bark that you keep hearing, that's my lab.
Okay.
She's a trained guard dog, so.
Very good. Yeah, I once upon a time I had a golden retriever when I lived in South Africa. A very gentle dog, but it's the only one of, I probably owned 20, 25 dogs in my life, the only one that ever bit me, because she was fighting with a Rottweiler and I got my hands on both their necks and pulled them apart, and my hand on her slipped and she went for the Rottweiler and put her big canine right through the back of my hand.
Ouch.
They both needed stitches in ears, so I took them off to the vet and my hand was bleeding. I said, can you sort me out as well? He said I could, but I'd better not. So didn't want to stitch my hand. He was worried about his license. It was great fun. Have you always had dogs?
No, there was about 10 years that I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
I had one that I was really attached to, and it took me a long time to get over it.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Eh? Yeah.
I mean, they're like kids.
Yeah.
And my wife and I are both empty nesters, so Hannah and Libby are our kids now.
You kids, yeah. And it's one of the penalties, for all the good and love that pets give us, they don't live as long as us. It's just one of those things, and it's sad. So tell me, Mark, do you work from home, or you work in an office building?
Both.
Both. Okay, that's nice.
Yeah, I probably work 65, 70 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
I work full-time 40 hours for an engineering firm here in Indianapolis.
Yeah, okay.
Plus, I do my website and all that stuff early in the morning. I wake up at 4:30 every morning, and I'm usually in bed by 9:30 or 10.
Right.
Comes from being raised in country like what you see behind me.
Yeah, I'm looking at that. Now, where is that? That's Nevada that I'm looking at. That's
Monument Valley.
Okay.
It's in northeastern New Mexico, southeastern Utah, that area.
Okay. That area, yeah.
Down in the Four Corners area is what
I'm
they
with
call
you.
that.
Yeah, I haven't been to that part of the world at all. I'd love to, but now I see a herd of cattle behind you in that
Yep.
photograph, and the grass doesn't look too bad. Is it very arid, or do you get a bit of rain there?
This picture is taken high enough where there's usually pretty good grass. Monument Valley, the elevations vary from 5,000 feet to 2,000.
Right.
So you've got about 3,000 feet of elevation range there.
Big variation, yeah.
So up in the higher elevations, you've got good grass. A lot of it's sawgrass, which is hard for the cattle to digest, but at least it gives them something to eat.
Sure.
And there's a lot of ranchers that, grow hay and alfalfa down there. So, you'll go through a lot of it in the wintertime.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm sure you would. And do you get snow there in winter?
Yes.
You do, eh?
Yeah, I used to live down in the southwestern corner of Colorado, outside of Durango. I used to tell people I live 30 miles west and 2,000 feet above Durango.
Really?
Yeah, it's 7,000 feet, 7,200 feet.
Yeah.
And I can remember going to bed at night, 9 o'clock, just starting to snow. There was no snow on the ground. And at that time, I had a Ford F-250, 3/4 ton, 4x4. When I woke up at 6 in the morning, I could not find my truck.
Really? Totally covered in snow?
That deep.
Wow. That is something, yeah.
We got 5 foot of snow in like 12 hours or 8 hours.
Wow, that is amazing. I'm in southwest Ontario, and I had seen snow in the mountains in South Africa, and I saw a foot of snow in South Africa once, and even in Johannesburg twice when I lived near there, we had very light dustings of snow. But the most I've seen here in 24 hours is probably 2 feet. And that was a lot, and it was quite amazing. Wow, that's interesting. We had a horse lady from near Denver on our call earlier this week, and she's at almost 6,000 feet where she lives. That's right. Yeah. And our farm in Zimbabwe was on the highlands there, and we were 5,600 feet above sea level there. So, I've lived at high altitude for a lot of my life too, and
come down to the lowlands and you got to cut the air with a knife because you can't breathe it.
And here right now we're sitting. I looked at the thermometer just now. We're 85 degrees, which is quite warm for us. It's going to be hotter tomorrow, but it's humid. So I find this heat. I've survived in 110, 115 in the military in Rhodesia as it was in the Zambezi Valley, but dry, and it wasn't too serious. But this humidity is a killer. You've got to try and work. And we are here, I think we're 600 feet only here, But anyway, I'm not complaining. At least I've got no one trying to kill me here, so it's a little safer.
Not dodging bullets anymore.
No. So mainly you're interested in people that are looking for hosting, assistance with their web operation, and who want to learn design work. Is that correct?
Yes, but I also, existing websites, I do reputation marketing, not reputation management, reputation marketing.
Marketing, okay.
I go through and do a citation analysis, all the different citations, websites, Yelp, Google, all that. One of the big bugaboos that a lot of people aren't aware of is if, say on Yelp, I've got Indianapolis, IN space 46038, and on Google My Business, I've got Indianapolis, Indiana.
Right.
Those are two different listings.
So, correct.
Just a little thing like that, instead of getting the link juice from both of them, you only get one or the other.
Getting one or the other, correct. Yeah, okay. And then I think another important service you give people is you can help them make their websites compliant with can't remember the regulation name, ADA and
WCAG.
Okay. So just say a little bit more about that for our listeners.
Well, the ADA is American Disabilities Act, and WCAG is Website Consortium or something like that.
Okay.
I can never remember all the acronyms. There's too many of them. But essentially, it's a little snippet of code that I put on your website. It puts a little icon, and you can pick where you want it. Any of the 6 areas, upper left, upper right, middle left, right, bottom left, right. And when you click on it, it opens up and gives the viewer, say they have visual difficulties. They can't see color change. They may be colorblind. Well, there's a toggle that will cycle through different settings for the colors to make things more predominant.
Right.
There's another one that, text to speech, the TTS.
Yeah.
You click that and it starts reading the website to you out loud. The other one, I think there's 8 different options in there.
Interesting.
You can see colors in that, but you have a hard time reading small print. There's a button there to
increase the font size. Clever. Yeah. Okay. That's
another
important.
One. A lot of fonts on some of these websites are really hard to read.
Yep.
Lobster and something like that. There's a button that automatically flips it to a legible font.
Legible. That's good. That's good. That's very important. We're running out of time, Mark. So if any of our viewers and listeners want to get hold of you, what's the best way to contact you? Go to your website or?
Yep. The number 2, gsm.biz.
Okay.
The number 2, getsales.com.
Say that again. Number 2.
The number 2, getsales, one word.
Okay.
GETSALES.com.
.com. Okay.
And that's actually an example of a online store that I can build for you.
Right. Okay.
And then my primary site is mkw or minus sign ind.com.
Okay. Now I'll put those on there. That's great. So there you are, to our viewers and listeners. And Mark has a lot of services to help you improve your website and be compliant with these new regulations. So you have the contacts and can get hold of him. And that brings us to the end of another episode of our Yakking podcast. We'll be back in a few days with another guest for you. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.